Well, hello everyone. This is Lorianne Smith, and I am just doing a series of videos for my website, Born in Hell. This is the third video that I'm doing, and just looking at different years, different periods in my life, sort of expounding upon the issues, the abuse that was happening in our home. And this show is going to be ages 7 and 8, and I'm just going to continue on where I left off on the last video, talking on what happened in the years when I was 7 and 8. I detailed most of this in Life of Death or Redemption. I'm sort of just expounding upon it. I've written the three books that I've written are pretty explicit, and I was able to do a lot more describing, a lot more detail in those books that I'm giving here on the videos. I'm just giving some more background information that I didn't put in the books, and for people that are interested in my work and in my story and in stopping and preventing child abuse, and just learning about what is child abuse and what child abuse does to a child, and what dysfunction and abuse and domestic violence does to a family, and if they don't get help. And so this is why I'm doing these shows. It's mainly for informational purposes only, and for people that are interested in my story. So thanks everybody for being here. I appreciate it. Thanks for following my work. I really appreciate that. And we're going to get right into this. I'm putting an explicit warning on this. This topic that I'm going to be talking about today. There's two that are very sensitive material. I'm not going to be going into too many graphic detail, too much graphic detail on any of it. But I'm just going to give people an idea of what was going on and why I call this website Born in Hell, why I was born in hell, and this is why. Child abuse is a serious, horrific situation for children growing up in it. Um, and as we know, children are losing their lives every day because of it. And it's if they don't die from the abuse, then they suffer on in it. If they don't get any help, and then sometimes they're moved from one abusive situation to another in a foster care situation. Sometimes children are removed from their homes and then placed with another family member who ends up abusing them and killing them. So children really are at the mercy of the people looking after them, and they really are vulnerable, completely dependent upon those who are in charge of looking after them, the adults in the situation. Child abuse laws, child protection laws are not strong enough. They're not enforced enough. Children are murdered every day. You see the headlines out there all around the world. And this is why I'm speaking out. Just one more voice. And so you have to listen at your own discretion to this show and all of my shows, really. But I always put an explicit warning on anything that I think might trigger people, survivors of abuse who might be triggered by my material, as well as just an explicit warning for the public so that you know that this material is explicit, and that if it's going to, the topics of abuse, child sexual abuse, child abuse in any form, domestic violence, and violence of any form is going to bother you, then you need to turn the show off and you need to not listen, because we're all responsible for the choices that we make. And if you find that the topic is too disturbing, or it just bothers you, you need to make the right decision for yourself, and do the right thing for yourself and keep yourself safe, and turn the show off, right? So we'll get right into this. Years 7 and 8, we came back from Canada. We were there for 3 months. Just for the summer. My dad had sold the house out from underneath the family, my mother, and moved us to Canada for 3 months, and then moved back down to the States, to New Mexico, right 2 blocks from where we were living before, and into a rented house. We stayed for a little short time at this motel, and then moved into this house that I call Hell House on Indian School Road. And it really was a house of hell for me, for everybody living in that home. No one was doing well in that home. It was a horrific situation. And when I was 7 years old, my brother had been the year before had been in the penitentiary, in the state pen in New Mexico there for forgery. And so he had gotten out, and then we moved to Canada. Then we came back, and we came back at the end of summer, which was probably, I'd say probably August, somewhere in there. And by October, my brother was killed. My brother Chess, who had been in penitentiary. It was a bizarre situation. There's still no clear decision. They actually, for a while, had it a cold case, and then they closed it and said no, it wasn't a cold case. It was that he had fallen and hit his head and died. There was all kinds of weird stuff behind it. I actually found out some of the truth that I believe is the truth a few years ago from a friend of mine who knew behind the scenes some of the information about my brother's death, and nothing's being done about it. I'm not pursuing it. It's so many years ago. This person, whoever was responsible for it, they're going to have to face God, and that's my peace. But my brother, he was 19 years old, and he was killed. My brother Chess. He's the one that kind of was the protector in the family. He was a good guy. He was always trying to help my mom by telling her, you're a person, you don't deserve to be abused. Always trying to help me by telling my mom not to be so hard on me, and would get my dad to stop beating me with a belt or whatever. He was the only one really that stuck up for me. There was a couple of other occasions when some siblings stepped in, but very rare. He was really the one who was the protector of the good guy in the family, and he was killed. And he went to a party. Him and my brother Rob went to a party, and one night, and something happened at the party, and they called for a ride home from my dad. So obviously there was trouble, and they were teens. I mean, my brother Chess was 19. My brother Rob would have been 18, or just turning 18 actually, and 17 somewhere in there. No, probably 18. No, he was older. He was older. That's right. Chess was 1 year younger than Rob, but he was the protector. Rob was the older one. He would have been 20. Yeah, 20 years old. So they called for a ride for my dad. Obviously, there was obviously trouble. Something was going on. Maybe somebody had threatened my brother's life. I don't know. My dad didn't want to go pick them up from this party, and supposedly, but he went. So he went and drove over there where they were at, and came back with one of my brothers, my brother Rob. And they were both acting funny, a little strange. I don't know what happened. All I know is that overnight, the next morning, the police came and got my mom to go and identify the body of my brother, her son. So my mom and dad had to go and identify my brother's body. Yes, it was him. He was killed. I figured it was murder. They did too. He had been hit in the back of the head, right behind the ear, with a big heavy rock, and it had busted his skull, and he died instantly. They said he would have been in no pain. He wouldn't have suffered at all. He wouldn't have even know what hit him. It hit him so, whoever did this hit him so hard in the back of the head right here, they just killed him instantly. And so he was dead. He was gone. And it was a sad time. It was a really sad time. We had the funeral, and people were really upset. My dad was freaking out, and my dad, of course, was mentally ill already. He had been diagnosed borderline schizophrenic, and also borderline personality disorder. My mom was diagnosed manic depressive, which is bipolar, and my brother Rob was diagnosed years before. This was back when the social workers were involved. They actually did these tests on them, and they were already having mental problems. And so this just put everybody over the edge. My mom was just sank into a huge depression. My dad was in a huge depression as well, as being psychotic, and he wouldn't get off the couch. He thought the police thought that he did it, because he and my brother were one of the last people to see my brother alive. And I thought that my dad did it. I was quite sure, I was quite convinced in my mind that my dad had been the one that had done that. Because my dad was always beating on my brothers. And I thought, yeah, he probably just got mad at my brother. My brother maybe fought back and my dad killed him. Maybe on accident, but my brother's dead. So I kind of thought my dad might have done it. I didn't think my brother Rob would have done it, because Rob was counting on Chess to be there to protect him from my dad. So, they were buds. They were really close. So I don't think that it would have been Rob. I thought for sure it would have been my dad. And my dad was acting really funny. And he was almost thinking that the police, like, he would sit on the couch and he'd be like, they're going to think I did it. Because, see, my parents were brought up on abuse charges. So he's sitting there thinking, oh, my God, the cops are going to think I killed my son, because he was abusing his sons. He was abusing his whole family for years. I'm 7 years old. This has been going on a long time before 7 years. I mean, my dad had been abusing his family since the day before my mother was married, right? This is why I'm speaking out about this stuff. This is a serious, tragic issue. And so, I just everybody was just miserable. My mom and my brother sank into a bit of a depression. My brother was Rob stayed in his room. He never went outside. I think it's because he thought his life was in danger as well. Because whoever killed my brother probably wanted to kill him too. And so he stayed in his room in this house, in this hell house on Indian School Road that we had moved into when we came back from Canada. This all happened within 3 months. So he stayed in his room that whole winter, just really depressed, not talking to anybody, sitting in the dark with candles lit, using the same Kleenexes over and over and over again. We remember this. Me and my sister actually used to talk about this stuff. And I used to go in to talk to him. My brother Rob, he was, at this point, I loved my brothers, all of them, very much. They were sometimes abusive to me, but just normal sibling kind of stuff. But they were way older than me, and they were a little violent sometimes, a little rough with me. But, I loved my brothers, and I could see they were suffering. I could see my whole family was suffering, and in this horrible, horrific situation. So my dad was still attempting suicide at this point. My brother was in his room, depressed and probably contemplating suicide. Who knows? He was suicidal as well. But my dad was still attempting suicide at this point. And we were this house that we lived in, that we were just renting, Indian School Road and San Mateo. It was called Hell House. I called it Hell House. It backed onto a freeway, so the backyard was actually really 20 feet away was the freeway, the entrance to the freeway. So my dad would go running out on the freeway at night, in the middle of the night, trying to kill himself, naked, running down the road naked, trying to get hit by vehicles, by trucks, especially big semi trucks. So my brother Rob and my brother Howard would have to go get him and bring him home. This was going on at night, and my dad was having psychotic episodes. The devil's coming for him, the demons. He should just kill us all. This we had been listening to since I was born. That's why I was born into hell. It was my parents' hell they created for us, but it was hell. And he'd been talking about killing us for years, and killing himself and killing us. Or my mom was always just talking about killing us, sometimes killing herself, but. My dad was talking about doing a whole thing where he would murder the family and then kill himself. And so I was always a little leery of my dad, very, very leery of my dad. And I talked about that in my last show where he tried to drive me and my sister over a cliff, right? And so absolutely horrific. I didn't have any real relationship with my parents. I didn't have any I felt bad for them. I could see they were suffering as a person as this little kid, knowing that my family was having so much grief and so many problems. Of course I felt bad for them, but in the meantime, I didn't have any relationship with them because they never built a relationship with me. It was just smack across the face, get away from me, go sit down, go behave yourself, or you're going to get beat. That was my relationship with my parents. So, my mom was very hostile, at this point. I detail this in the book a lot, went through a lot of detail, which I won't go into too many details here, but she at this point had lost her everything that I think that she thought she had any kind of reserve of sanity left was gone after my brother was murdered. And just, my dad not being able to cope, trying to kill himself at night. She wasn't getting any sleep. Her health was deteriorating. And my mom would have been, I was 7, she would have been 45 years old at this time. She looked like she was about 55. Just from having so many children, being so sick all of her life, being abused as a child herself, not taking care of herself, not being looked after. My dad was always attacking her and slapping her and punching her and hitting her and, throwing her against the wall. And she in turn would retaliate and the two of them would be fighting. It was a horrific situation. And, there was a few people that cared about my mom, and especially my mom, and they tried to be nice to my dad too. And they kind of blew off the whole domestic violence thing. No big deal. And it's no big deal that the kids are all trashed and Lori's beaten to rat shit over here. Nobody cared, right? And they didn't. And, these are people that today know the situation and sit there and they would sit there and say, we didn't realize it was that bad. It's because you weren't paying attention, people. And, my mom was very good at making people feel sorry for her. We were not allowed to cry. Like nobody in the family, none of the kids were allowed to cry. And so if you cried, you would be beaten for sure. My mom made sure of that, and my dad as well. We were not allowed to cry. Now my mom could cry. She could cry all she wanted to. She could cry, oh, my children, they're just so horrible. And my husband, he's treating me so badly. She's sitting at the table crying her eyes out, feeling sorry for herself, which I mean, I don't blame her, right? But we weren't allowed to cry. So, if she was beating on me, I was not allowed to cry. I was not allowed to cry about anything. Um, she was allowed to cry, but not us. And we were made to just take her wrath. And it was a horrible situation. It really was. My mom was very, very hostile to me at this point. I was still trying to be a little kid. I was still playing with my Barbies and stuff. And, um, but the abuse to this point really had been, I kind of thought about it. I kind of went back. This is a very triggering show for me to do. That's why I talk about, for people, it can trigger survivors of abuse, and it's also very explicit. It's hard to deal with. I know myself, I had to live through it, so I've been there and dealt with it. But it's hard to look back at this stuff, and I sort of thought about it. And I thought, the abuse up to this point, from 0 to 7 years old, especially that I remember from being 4 on, because before 4, a little sketchy on some memories. Not they're not very clear, and I have very few memories. But from 4 on, I have lots. Actually, almost all of my memories intact. And my mother, she used to just mainly just slap me around, backhand me. She would knock me down to the floor, literally. She would knock me off my feet. My mother was almost 6 feet tall. She was right at like 5'11" and a half or something. She was a 300-pound woman, 250 to 300 pounds at any given time. And she was vicious and mean and big. On her deathbed, my mother's arms were at least just an arm's length. Let me see if I can get it in the video here. My arm is really long. My mom's arms came out, way past mine. She was much taller than me, even on her deathbed. My mother was much bigger than me. I'm 5'7". I'm 5'7", would have been 5'7" and a half, but over the years, my car accidents and just, my body's just kind of. But my mother was tall, very big, and very, very, very violent. And when she hit you, man, it wasn't like a little tap, like a little slap. She wasn't like, oh, straighten up, straighten up, straighten up, because that's what my brother-in-law would do. My brother-in-law was continually doing that. My sister's husband, because my nephews were always around. When they moved back from California, they were coming around here and there to visit and stuff and see my mom and dad. And they'd bring their kids, my nephews. And, my brother-in-law was always kind of smacking you in the face a little bit, but it wasn't like a slap, like a something that's going to send you to the freaking wall. Well, my mother used to beat the shit out of me. And I have a lot of, like little scratches and, like especially over here, facial scratches from her rings and stuff. She split my lip. She split my lip right here. Um, Totally trashed this side of my face. It's stuff. It never goes away. I'm very good at putting on makeup, and it's like she loved to just hit you in the face, and just slap you around. She used to shove me into walls. She used to shove my head into cabinets. Just bashing me into cabinets in the back. Um, just pounding on me. She would hit my head mainly. She was into hitting the head. She was doing that with the other boys too, and then the kids, right? Except for Kathy. My sister Kathy managed to escape most of this. She might have got a few little spankings or something, but she got a few slaps. My mom did slap her a couple of times. I did see it. I was witnessing it. I was even sticking up for my sister, but my sister never stuck up for me. She was afraid of being beaten, right? So she was just like, I'm not saying nothing, man. Let her take it. I don't want it. And so, my mom, she used to beat me with belts, especially when I remember 4, 5, 6, those years there. My mom used to just wield the belt, man. She loved to beat you with a belt. She used to just pound on me with her fists, just pound and punch and pound my back especially, and just hit you on the head with things. She loved to grab things in the kitchen. That's why I said the kitchen was a very dangerous place to be with her. You could go in there and get something to eat, but you had to be really careful around her because you never know what was going to be coming at you. If she was mad at you for some reason, and it could be anything. Could be anything. Could be that she was mad because you had a look on your face. But most of the time, people say, why would your mother beat you like that? I've had people ask me that. Like, you must have been a bad kid. I've had people tell me that. You must have been awfully bad for your mother to treat you like that. And I'd be like, no, it was a look on my face. See, I didn't have to have any particular look on my face. I could have had this look on my face. And my mother would use it as an excuse. She'd say, you take that look off your face right now. And I'd be like, what look? And I'd be panicking because I knew I was going to get beat. As soon as she said that, I'd be like, oh, shit, I'm going to get beat. My mother's going to beat the shit out of me because I knew it. This is how my mother was, right? And I thought, oh, I'm in for it now, man. So I'd be like, what look? What look? And I was serious. I was like, I'll change it. I'll change the look for you because I seriously don't want a beating right now. And my mom would be like, I told you. And then that would be her excuse. See, I was just a punching bag for my mother. I was a convenient little 7-year-old, little tiny little punching bag. Something that she could just pound her frustrations out on. I was also a rape child. She did not want me. She had no relationship with me. She had no love for me. Not when I was growing up. She didn't. And I don't even think she really loved me. I don't think she really loved anybody, really, to be honest with you. But this is how I grew up. Absolutely horrific. She would drag me around. She would pull my hair. She beat me with wet towels when I was little. And just general abuse. It was not discipline. And my dad mainly he liked to pull off his belt and beat on you with his belt. That's mainly what it was. Sometimes he would hit me with his fists when I got older, and I'll kind of go into that later on during my teen years. And he's like to hit me with his belt buckle in the face, right across the face, just right across the face, just smack you with that belt buckle. And, he injured my hip. My dad's responsible for my hip injury. And which is just complete ignorance because I was just playing on the ground and I didn't want to get up. And he was mad because I wouldn't move out of the way. I was playing in the hallway. And I thought he could just step over me, no big deal. And he was like telling me to get up and I didn't move, which I should have, but I was only 6 years old. I guess I was in my own little la-la land or something, you know what I mean? So he grabbed me by the leg and started dragging me into the bedroom to beat on me. And I was pulling on the doors to try to get away from him, like, yanking on the door. And he yanked my hip, pulling me through the doorway into the bedroom, which put my hip out of place. And then threw me on the bed and was beating on me. And that's the time when my brother, Chess, actually came and got the belt away from him. This is just how we grew up. Don't treat your kids like that. That's wrong. And, people think that's discipline. People think that's okay. That's discipline. So 7 to 8, 7 through 8, my mom's still beating on me, right? It just becomes more violent, more vicious. She's at this point slamming me into, cabinets, like I was saying, and using heavy objects to beat on me with. And, I got a beating. I actually detailed this in my book, A Life, Death, and Redemption. I got beaten for letting a screen door slam. It was an accident. I mean, she probably had told me don't let the door slam because she was babysitting this little baby, this sort of like friend of the family's little youngster. She was a little girl, little tiny little toddler, and she was sleeping. So my mom probably said, "Don't wake her up," But I let the screen door slam. It was one of those automatic kind of closing doors that's on a gas thing, right? And it didn't work very well. And so when I opened up the door to go outside with my Barbie, I had my Barbie pool of water there with my little margarine tub. And I was like, oh, I better not spill this because Mom would kill me. And it's just water, but I was like freaking out because I'm like, if I drop any of this water on the floor, my mom's going to kill me. So I get outside with my pool of water and the door slams behind me. I could hear my mom. And she's like screaming my name. And she's like, Lorianne Smith. And I know as soon as I hear that, man, I'm going to get beat for sure. So I'm like, oh, shit, I'm panicking, right? And so I go in the house because if I don't go and she has to come out and get me, then I'm really dead, right? So I go in and I'm like looking at her like, oh, shit. And the door slams again. And she's like, what did I tell you? What did I tell you? Don't slam that door. Now you've woken Shannon up, little baby Shannon. And I was like, freaking out, and she's like, you never listen to me. So then she beat the shit out of me with this wooden table leg that was from a broken piece of furniture from when they were fighting that they busted. My mom used to save stuff like that. Literally, she pulled it off the shelf so she could beat the shit out of me with it. And she did. And she cracked my knees, I mean, she just wanted to hurt me. Really, is what she wanted to do. I started to figure it out later that she was really trying to hurt me. It wasn't just discipline. It wasn't that I was just this bad kid. She just wanted somebody to be able to trash, and I was the one, you know. So it was absolutely horrific. You know, one time, me and my nephews, while we were living in this hell house, this is at the hell house. That's why I call it hell house. Right? And I remember every bit of it. Me and my nephews, my parents had gone to dinner or something, and we didn't go with them. So I thought we'd do they said let's wash and wax the floor for grandma, and I'm like, that was their grandmother, my mother, right? My nephews, right? And I said, oh well, okay. So we cleaned the kitchen floor. We thought we were doing a good job, but we put pledge on the floor instead of like a regular floor wax. So it was very, very slippery. So when my mom got home, she she was not happy and literally beat the crap out of me for that. Like, I mean, she pounded my head in and cracked my head open. I had blood pouring out of my head, and she literally just pounded the top of my head because I was very short compared to her. She was almost 6 feet tall, and I was not even over the cabinets yet because I was only like 7.5 years old. Right? And I hadn't even hit 8 years old at this point, you know, so I wasn't even up to the top of the cabinets yet. And I mean, she was towering over me, and she used to just pound the shit out of me. And you know, she was horrific. She was horrible. She would call me names. You know, I won't go into all the names, but she'd be beating on me. She'd be like, "You piece of shit," and you know, cursing me. "You're a goddamn this and that," and you know, fucking this and that. And she had a mouth like a sailor, really, really bad. I picked all that up from her. And she would insult me. She would call me names, you know, mostly bitch. I'm a bitch. You know, you're a bitch, and I'm gonna fucking kill you. And you know, and she would threaten my life, literally. And she'd be when she was beating on me, she'd be like, "I can kill you right now. It's my right. I had you. I bore you." Well, she didn't. I was born C-section. I was born out of rape. She didn't want me in the first place. She said, "I had you, and I can kill you whenever I want to." And I'd be like, go. After a while, I was like, "Go ahead. You've already killed me anyway." So she, you know, name calling, insulting, you know, demeaning. This is the stuff that I grew up with. You know, she would run me down. You know, I was just this rotten little bitch, always a little bitch. You know, rotten little whore, rotten little bitch, things like this. Terrible, 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 terrible things. I never heard from my mother. My mother never took me and cuddled me and said, "Oh, here's my girl." You know, I never had any of that normal interaction with people. I was just treated really like a piece of garbage and expected to just pull it together on school days, right? And it's like, you know, which I did. And people say, well, didn't the teachers notice all the beatings that you were taking and all the bruises and whatnot? Well, sure they did. They did absolutely nothing about it. My mom actually told me. I told her. All the bruises on my face and welts and whatever, scratches, whatever. I'd tell her. I'd say, what am I going to tell my teacher? You know, I'd be looking at her like, you're going to be in trouble. She'd be like, tell her I hit you. Tell her that I'm going to hit you again. And I was like, okay, I guess that's what I tell her. All right. My mom was like, yeah, because she didn't care if she lost me. See, this is what people don't realize. When parents don't, this is why I talk about abuse a lot, because people don't realize that this is not discipline. It's not a parent just get a little out of control with the discipline, you know, and accidentally hit their kid too hard and kill them. You know, this is a parent who is trying to completely destroy their child. And that's what my mother was doing. She was destroying me, you know, and it was on purpose. And I want people to know this. She never took responsibility for it. Never. Because she was the only one that was allowed to hurt, see. She was the only one that was allowed to cry. She was the only one that was allowed to be in pain. You were not. So if she hit you, I had to sit there. If I cried, I'd get another beating. So I learned very early to just take it, deal with it away from her. You know what I mean? Which mainly became anger. It became a lot of anger and a lot of rage, because I couldn't cry later about it. So it became this inner kind of hatred. For who? I want to say for everything, for life itself. It was absolutely horrific. You know, I just started to become shut down at this point, and I'm not even 8 years old yet, and I'm starting to feel shut down. That I'm not really human. I'm not really a human being. I'm a bitch. I'm somebody who deserves to be punched. You know, pow, right in the kisser. I'm someone who needs to be clubbed and beaten. And my family reinforced it because my family sat there and said, look at her, she's just a brat. You need to hit her. You need to smack her. So my mom would. My nephew who's alive today can attest to that. He knows that for sure. It was a horrific situation. So we'll pick up here where we left off. We'll pick up with, we won't have time to cover 8. So we'll just move on into 8, which is the child sexual abuse. And that'll be another explicit show. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I appreciate it. Thanks for watching my stuff, for sharing my stuff. Thanks for doing everything you can possibly do to stop child abuse and to make a difference in a child's life. And thanks for doing everything that you can possibly do to help a survivor out. God be with you all until the next time.